Hello, good morning, and remain indoors. Grey skies are gonna clear up. Put on a happy face. Brush off the clouds and cheer up. Put on a happy face. Yeah, I'm already isolated, so I'm fine. You may not be. You know the drill. I'm coming in blind to the news stories, though it's pretty much all about the coronavirus. I'll probably go off on a rant or two about things because that's the way this tends to go. I hope you're all okay. I hope none of you are infected. Infected people have to be dragged outside and left to the wolves. Long road ahead of us, I'm afraid it probably looks like. But there we are. So I will address any comments or questions or anything towards the end. Let's get this done. We've gone from all Brexit to all coronavirus. So fun, fun, fun. Fun, fun, fun. The big development, really, everywhere is emergency powers being enacted. And I'm always cautious about that. I think I have a healthy distrust for authority, which tends to manifest itself in these situations, like you do. And I'm especially nervous about this right now because many of the people in charge simply cannot be trusted with emergency powers. The idea of Boris Johnson or Trump with full on emergency powers, yeah, being the authoritarian souls that they are at heart and the incompetent souls that they are at heart, I find that concerning. Uh, shall we say? Fortunately, at least here in the UK, any emergency powers that are being brought forward are basically being limited to 6 months, with Parliament having to approve after that. It's not a complete safeguard. It's not a complete fail safe, but it is something, at least. Under these powers, airports would shut down. Police will be able to force people to remain indoors. The overall limit on these powers is a maximum of 2 years, but it looks like it's going to be on a 6 monthly approval basis. And this is after, of course, our government completely fumbled handling this in the early stages, much as the US has fumbled handling it in the early stages. What's depressing for me, besides the death and the job losses and everything else that's being incurred by this, is how little difference it's making. People who are pathologically anti government, anti state, seem to see this as some sort of reason to double down on those beliefs. And people who are radically anti private enterprise, anti corporation, anti whatever, they're finding reasons there to double down as well. Despite the blatantly stupid incompetence displayed by both Trump and Bojo, they still have their vociferous defenders whose minds are not being changed even in the slightest. Maybe they will once Granny kicks the bucket. Who knows? But it's just depressing how little difference this can make. I was kind of naively hoping that it might help bridge the divide, how it might make all this petty identity politics look just as pointless and stupid as it actually is, and that we have more in common with our neighbours than we don't. But personally, professionally, and from everything I'm seeing in society, there's only a handful of people who are trying to reach across the aisle and help each other out and do stuff like that, and they're getting their hands slapped away as often as they're getting it accepted. So it's a little depressing. There's also a lot of disinformation and misinformation and so on going about. One set of countries saying it's bioengineered and blaming the West, and another set of conspiracy theorists and governments putting it out there that, oh, it's a bioengineered thing that the Chinese made. No, it's just far more likely, and all the evidence is, studies have now been done, that it's an entirely natural germ that is making its way around. So, shut up. Shut up. Stop lying about it. Stop trying to blame people for it. Just fucking stop. Stop trying to claim that it's not that deadly and so on. It is. It might not seem like a huge percentage, and it might seem okay compared to other diseases, but you're failing to factor in the amount that it spreads, how slow it is to manifest, all of that. So while the percentage terms, while the odds, the chance of you as an individual might be pretty good, societally, a fuckload of people are going to die, or be left with permanent lung damage, and so on. So shut the fuck up. It is deadly in the ways that matter, and there's all the economic harm as well. Of course, we're likely to have a big bounce back, and a lot of divorces, and a lot of babies once all this blows over. There are positive sides, believe it or not. Might get time to get to those. But yeah, emergency powers in the hands of bigots and retards and authoritarians, it's not comforting. Particularly, even if the measures are necessary, can we trust them to give up those powers? We'll see, I guess. There's a big government rescue package. These are going on all over the world. US, UK are the ones I know the most about. The US seems to be mostly focusing on bailing out big businesses, which is a huge mistake, in my opinion. But then again, it doesn't seem to be shifting anyone's attitude towards Trump, unfortunately. It's just fucking stupid. But here in the UK, we're getting some help for people. Suddenly, everyone's a socialist, aren't they? It's not socialism that's the problem. It's not private enterprise that's the problem, necessarily. Private enterprise is good at some things. State is good at other things. The socialist approach works in some arenas. A capitalist approach works in other arenas. It's just we're way too over the line towards the capitalist side. But the problem is people, bad people doing bad things and badly thought out things. And a lot of what's being done is obviously quite knee-jerk. People squandered the time they had to prepare, unfortunately. And the devil is always in the details. So a huge amount of financial support is being loosened up by the Tories, who are acting in ways that the Labour government said they were going to, ironically enough, if they'd gotten in. But sick pay is being extended and supplemented. There's moves for rent forgiveness or extra help towards that. People who are employed but can't work will get something like 80% of their salary. You know, things like this. However, there are problems. A lot of people who work in this country, and presumably in lots of other countries as well, are technically self-employed, and then they get hired by the company on things like 0-hour contracts and so on. So there's a huge amount of people in very precarious financial and employment situations, essentially self-employed, but, well, on paper self-employed, but in real terms not. And then there are people who are genuinely self-employed like myself, and there's basically fuck all help for any of us. What we've been told is that if we are particularly hard up, we can go onto universal credit for the duration. That's somewhat means tested. It's a system that hasn't been rolled out everywhere. There's problems with it. but that's what's being offered. You would basically get unemployment rates, which I can't remember how much that is. Let me just look that up quickly. I want to get this accurate. Back when I was unemployed, it was about £60 a week. UK unemployment allowance. It's still about 60. Oh no, sorry, £73.10 per week. If you're a couple, you get £114.85 per week. Payments made every 2 weeks. Okay, so that's what unemployment allowance is. Now, thanks to my wonderful mental health issues and social anxiety, which means that self-isolation is a real breeze for me, but still, thanks to those issues, I get employment support allowance and personal independence payment, which amounts to about £500 a month in total. I think it's just been changed, so I don't know. If I went on to unemployment allowance, universal credit, I would lose 2/3 of that, because the way universal credit is set up is to fuck people over and stop them getting the help they need. So I think you can see that that's not really a practical solution for me, and I'm sure it's not a practical solution for a lot of other mentally unwell and physically disabled people, because the way universal credit is set up, you want to avoid it as long as possible. So I'm not going to be so crass as to ask for help for myself, but if you know people who are self-employed who are having trouble, drop them some groceries. If they have Patreons and things, help them out there. Do whatever you can to help people along, all right? Because at the moment they're falling through the cracks of what little help there is. So yeah, be aware of that. I don't know the situation in the US, so I can't speak to that, but a lot of people are really struggling with rent and so on there. I know that much. One thing people have been able to do, and the way a lot of restaurants have been adapting, is that even if they didn't offer home delivery or pickup or drive-through before, a lot of restaurants have been offering those services, or doubling down on Deliveroo or Uber Eats and that sort of thing. But a lot of them are now being asked to close, and a lot of others are voluntarily closing because the traffic and so on, the footfall, the traffic and so on is just down so much. Even stores that are doing reasonably well outside of that sector are seeing like a 60% fall in business, which obviously is unsustainable. So they're closing down a lot of their stores temporarily. We hope temporarily. And now that's extending to McDonald's and others. So today, Monday, McDonald's is closing all of its restaurants in the UK by the end of the day. Nando's has closed 400 restaurants across the UK. In terms of jobs and people's employment and so on, it's a lot of part-time workers, but even so, it's about 135,000 people in the UK suddenly with no work and no income, especially since a lot of it's part-time, a lot of them on 0-hour contracts and so on, and so as we just covered, they don't qualify for any assistance. Staff will be paid 80% of their wages, but if you're on 0-hour contracts and so on, you may not get that help. There is a big pushback forming about that, and so I think we can expect more help for self-employed and precariat people coming up, but still. But the other thing is that means the availability of food is bad in a lot of areas. A lot of places are food deserts. If you're trying to order your groceries online from like Tesco, they're booked up completely for home deliveries for the next 6 weeks, so don't even bother trying. I would say I don't know what the situation with the other supermarkets that deliver is. Even my village shop, I went in first thing this morning to have first dibs. Not to like buy everything out, but just to get some essentials that we needed, right? They had milk. They were completely out of eggs, and bear in mind that we get eggs there directly from local farms. There were all the shelves were half bare, and people haven't really panicked here. So it just goes to show, yeah. And with restaurants closing, a lot of places are food deserts. There's nowhere to even get food, right? There's not enough supermarkets, corner shops, whatever else there might be, and a lot of them are closing as well, though they're being deemed sort of essential. But if it's a one-person corner shop, they've not got the supply, and may not personally want to take the risk. So with restaurants closing, everything gets a bit more fragile and precarious as well. See, now, I laid down some stock when it seemed when it seemed like a no-deal Brexit was incredibly possible, and it may well still be possible. And Boris has suggested that Brexit's still going to go ahead regardless. So we're going to be hit economically by this and by Brexit. Responsible thing to do would be to cancel it, but fat chance. Not politically doable. Unions have taken up on the side of the self-employed, like moi. There are 5 million self-employed workers in the UK. Now, I didn't think I was going to be particularly hit because my stuff is cheap and it's electronic, it's instantly deliverable, there's no risk of contamination or illness, people are bored, they need something to do in their homes. But my sales, since this has really kind of ticked up, have gone down about 30%. So I'm just going to concentrate my time doing cheap, quick stuff to try and help people out, give them something to do, maybe even free stuff, host online games on this channel, stuff like that. I'm going to shift my focus. Again, I'm not asking you to support me. I'm okay. I don't have to pay rent. I own the house. Yeah, I'm getting financial support for my brain issues and so on, but there's plenty of other people, particularly Americans, sad to say, who are particularly precarious, who deserve your help. So if you're okay, if you're still employed, or you can scrape together just a buck, give it to someone who's self-employed, who has a Patreon or a Subscribestar or whatever. Find someone like that who needs the help, and do what you can, because at the moment the governments are just not supporting people like us. So I'm okay, other people aren't. Please try and find a way to help them. Various politicians are starting to pick up on this as well. So hopefully we'll see some kind of change and some kind of support. And the thing is, we can't afford the time and the effort to means test everybody. It should just be a grant, a universal basic income. And yeah, that's another positive to look forward to, perhaps. Maybe things are going to start shifting on those lines when it's shown how practical and helpful it is. But again, I'm not holding my fucking breath. Remain indoors. There's been rumours and stuff going around about how suddenly everyone being at home and playing games online and streaming like you're doing now, things like that, this is going to cause problems with the high-speed internet infrastructure in particular. But this doesn't seem to be particularly true. So, at least here in the UK, British Telecom says that the broadband infrastructure still has plenty of space on it to cope with the increased demand. Demand's gone up 30 to 60%. Netflix is throttling quality, which will help, but there's not really a big problem, at least as of yet. Now, some people have used this to attack gamers, because of course they have, and to say that gamers need to be responsible and not play online because they'll be using up internet that would be available to other people. No. Gaming doesn't use up very much bandwidth, unless you're also streaming, of course. It is streaming, particularly down streaming, so watching Netflix and things, that does potentially threaten the infrastructure. But right now, there's no problem, so you shouldn't feel guilty at all about watching a box set or spending all day on YouTube. Though hardly fucking anybody is producing any content. I've run out of YouTube, so if you've got any recommendations of people to follow, I'm going to probably try and up my output, because if I can't find anything to watch, there's plenty of other people that can't find anything to watch, and it's better to be part of the solution than part of the problem. But yeah, don't worry too much about the internet, at least in the UK. And if you do feel guilty and want to cut down, stop watching Netflix. Other streaming services are available. The virus has hit NASA's plans to go back to the moon. Workers have been unable to work on the new boosters and so on to the same extent. There's a confirmed case at one of the space centers in Mississippi. So we're not going to the moon quite as soon. Maybe it'll knock us off by another year or something. You think with all those clean rooms it wouldn't be so much of a problem, but we'll see. Yeah, a lot of launch deadlines are unlikely to be met in the foreseeable future, which means our space program's likely to be knocked back year, 2 years, maybe as much as 5 years, because these things tend to snowball. But yeah, look to the stars, but you can't go there. It's not the disease. Parents being now told to keep their children at home unless absolutely necessary. They were keeping schools open. Schools are now officially shut, but the children of key workers are still allowed to attend. So schools will be filling in some of the childcare gap that's being created, at least for people who are essential staff, so nurses, doctors, police, that sort of thing. Doctors, nurses, some teachers and social workers, people involved in the justice system, religious staff, not essential. Some twat on Twitter yesterday was saying, "Oh, this is all judgment by God." So I told him to go to church and cough. Food production is considered essential. Police, armed forces, firefighters and prison staff are considered essential. Transportation workers and transportation construction workers, utilities, communications, financial services staff, including postal staff and waste disposal workers, or bin men, as we call them here. They do still tend to mostly be men. But yeah, I think if you were sensible, you were keeping your kids home already. But now it's what you're supposed to do. So hopefully we'll see some change. What's really stupid is the government has hedged its language here for the past few weeks, saying, "Oh, we just sort of kind of suggest that you shut down your business and send everyone home," so that they didn't have to pay the compensation. Fortunately, that's now changed. But there you go. That's some positive virus-related news, so we'll leave that to the end. So's that. There's a lot of myths going around about deadliness and all that. Just find a trusted source like the NHS, right, and see what they have to say about it. That's positive news. Okay, so the positive side of all this. Number 1, Harvey Weinstein has it. Whether this is a dodge to try and stay out of jail, or whether he's genuinely ill. No, he's in prison now, isn't he? So, yes, he's tested positive for the disease. He's in isolation. Yeah, he's old. He's maybe rather ill and unfit. At least he was playing that up when he was in court at the end. So, positive side. Maybe Harvey Weinstein will die. So that's going to save someone a lot of cover-up. Isn't it? Gallows humour. It's all we have. Also, on the positive side, Coronation Street and Emmerdale have stopped filming, so no soap operas. Awesome. Also, Loose Women has stopped filming, so woot. Like I said, positive side. Maybe we'll get some good reruns. Something uplifting, perhaps. Maybe The Good Life. People can turn their gardens into allotments and be inspired by a young Felicity Kendall, because I know she inspires me. Right, yes, positivity. This is kind of weak sauce, to be honest. But there are some positive things that I think we can draw from this. Pollution has gone down, and we've seen how quickly nature can recover in certain places, like Venice. In China, the massive air pollution north of Wuhan has just gone, all around Beijing. There's still a little bit, but it's just practically gone. So the earth is going to get a nice breather. Like I said, in Venice, the canals have gone clear, and all kinds of fish and so on have been seen swimming there for the first time in a very long time. Some people, not enough people, but some people are being very kind, just locally. The village shop has started doing deliveries, which is something they never offered before, and they're setting aside a certain amount of stock for people who are vulnerable and so on. The food bank donations were always full, but it seemed like a little bit more generous this time when I went round there. Shops are making sort of grey or silver hours where old people can get out and get the things that they need, and they're keeping some stock back. A lot of people are shitty. There's no two ways about it. A hell of a lot of people. But there's a core of nice people doing the right thing. There's companies that are doing their best to ensure that their workers are safe, and they're making money and assistance available. There's landlords who are doing rent forgiveness for every slumlord that isn't. There's people extending leases so that people aren't put out on the street. There's all kinds of good, nice stuff going on. But there's always the negative side as well. And I don't find things like Instagram sing-alongs to be particularly inspiring, but I also don't find the meanness towards Gal Gadot and the other celebrities, or the trouble they're having being isolated, which is something that they as a demographic aren't used to. I think it's just mean-spirited. Yeah. And while a lot of these sing-alongs and exercise sessions in tower blocks and all that kind of thing, while it's cringeworthy, right, if it keeps people entertained and it keeps people happy, why do we care? And why do we want to take a shit in their cornflakes, right? Be nice, be forgiving. There's a lot of creativity going on. A lot of kids doing independent learning and learning that learning can be fun, which is nice. And in the gaming community, certainly I've seen a lot of people offering to run sessions online. I've been offering. Uptake is a bit low. There's a Dragon Warriors game recorded on this channel, and I hope to be hosting games every other day, 2 to 3 days. So make sure you subscribe. Nearly at 100 subs on this channel, which means I can get my custom URL if I remember correctly. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe, hit the bell, then go over to my main channel, Postmortem Video, subscribe, hit the bell, select all, because otherwise you're not going to see what I'm doing. Because the notifications just aren't going out to most people. Right, let's have a quick sip of water. I've had a sore throat and just feeling slightly wonky for weeks, but it's not turned into anything, so fuck knows what's going on with me. If you've got any more questions or anything, or comments, slap them in. Oh, there was some other positive side stuff I wanted to talk about. It's shown that universal basic income is possible. It's and possibly necessary. It has demonstrated that even the most ardent of asshole, pull yourself up by your bootstraps libertarians are willing to accept socialist solutions in certain circumstances. It's shown that masses upon masses of people can work from home. Don't need to go into an office, right? Or at least certainly not every day, right? And I am almost certain that productivity for those people who can work from home is going to go up. So we might even see an end to things like call centres and so on. As usual, porn is ahead of the curve here because the phone systems that handle phone sex, right? There's not really any offices like there used to be. It just redirects to people's mobiles or their home phones so they can work from home and, log in and log out and do shifts and so on. There's no reason why businesses can't do that for everybody. Think of the savings on overhead, traffic, pollution, power. They've already offloaded a lot of costs onto people with 0-hour contracts and deliveries and all of that kind of thing. Yeah, if you can push people off to work from home, the company's going to save a huge amount of money, and they're putting those costs of power and heat and so on onto the worker. But they're also going to save money because they're not travelling and so on. So I think we might see, hopefully we'll see a boom in home working and a more modern approach to that kind of work. Downsizing of offices, that sort of thing. I hope we see that. That kind of more sort of distributed way of doing things will also encourage high-speed broadband rollout, all of those kind of things. The more people that can work from home, the better, I think. And a lot of people have more disposable income. So at the end of all this, we're likely to see an abrupt financial boom, a whole lot of divorce, like I said, a whole lot of kids. But the bounce back could be very positive. That's how it usually is after wars or pandemics and things like that. You can go back and look at the Spanish flu and the economics around that if you're a history buff, and you can see all that. Adam says, ScoMo in Australia is badly mishandling it too. He's keeping the schools open. Yeah, it's like they don't understand that they're just at an earlier stage of what's going on in Italy or China or wherever else. But he doesn't believe in climate change, so why would he believe in medical science? Hold these motherfuckers to account at the ballot box, right? That's all we've got. That's slim hope. Jack says, did you see all the boomers using the pandemic as an excuse for a paid holiday to Snowdonia? Yes, and it's a fantastically bad idea because they're in the high-risk group and they're all travelling there from various places, and so they're very likely to expose each other to it. And a lot of these areas that people are fleeing to are just not set up to deal with the issue. Like a lot of the Scottish islands, the smaller Scottish islands, don't have proper hospitals, and they're converting village halls and things, but they don't have the equipment. So don't go to rural areas like mine, he said, out of a sense of self-preservation, because you're just going to overload the system and you're likely to spread the disease to areas where it hasn't necessarily been yet. That would be bad. Okay? So don't fucking do it. Jack also says the beach was packed down in Brighton. What is wrong with people? You've seen all those viral videos of the spring breakers all kind of celebrating. It's not sensible. It's not sane. It's massively irresponsible. Well, now the police are going to be able to send them home. So, yay for police states, I guess. A society is only as free as it can afford to be. And at the moment, we can't afford toilet paper, let alone freedom. Hopefully, at the end of this, we'll see those positive changes that I've been talking about and less of the negative ones. Right, I should get on. I've got some layout to do. I've been inspired by local stories of the plague and how people handled that back in the day, and I thought people might be interested. There's a story about Vernham Dean, which is about 15-20 minutes down the road, So when I knock off work today, I'm going to drive out there and do a little video about the plague story there, which hopefully people will find interesting, and that'll probably be tomorrow's video over on my main channel, Postmortem Video. Right, sub, hit the bell, select all, like, comment, share, all that jazz. You know how it goes. Good luck out there, and remember, remain indoors. Zang.